please come into my room.
Welcome back to yet another episode of the MUstaSH Room. I am your host, David Ben. I'm really excited about the guests that we have on today. One of them is a repeat. That will be wifey Jill. She has an update for you on a new mushroom. Really interesting stuff, so I'm glad to have her back. And also, my good friend Andy, he joins via Zoom. I'm starting to get the hang of the Zoom thing, and the audio actually sounds pretty good. So I'm going to keep rolling with that for whoever dare not enter the podcast studio, which, considering the climate and the pandemic, and probably not a good idea to enter the studio right now. So we'll err on the side of caution and try to Zoom this thing out. So, yeah, on the podcast, Andy and I kind of go into a lot of detail regarding psychedelic experiences, meditation, mindset, setting, just, kind of notes from the field for those of us that have headed down those paths. And he's a really interesting guy and a musician and really very cerebral with the way he approaches life. So we're good buddies. I'm really excited for you guys to hear what he has to say. My Cleveland Browns, you'll constantly hear me refer to them. They're in the playoffs for the first time in 18 years as a Cleveland sports fan. That's amazing. So my mood may or may not change. We'll see when they play, when I record. If you notice a difference, I apologize in advance. So with all that out of the way, enjoy episode 5.
My wife probably has a better refined palate for different types of mushrooms, but I just kind of go with what she likes.
Right.
Since she does most of the cooking,
Yeah.
But
as long as it doesn't taste like an anchovy, and unless you're an anchovy fan, which I haven't found that many of them. But no, mushrooms are fantastic. Jill actually does a segment on this podcast. And again, this is fresh and we're still trying to cultivate an audience, but she does a little segment on a different type of mushroom that provides either culinary or medicinal value each segment. So I don't know which one she's going to do this time, but we're trying to. The psychedelic element is cool, but I want to give fungi just a little bit more props. And so we're trying to hit it from the different facets, like, how can this be better for your overall mental health or physical health or cardiovascular health or whatever the case may be. So,
sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that they are generally underrated in terms of, just even like the kingdoms of life on Earth, but I mean, they are the thing responsible for eating the rot and eating the decomposing stuff and helping to decompose and recycle it back into the environment as something that's usable.
I love that so much. That's so amazing.
It's pretty remarkable, and I mean, there have definitely, I've seen some pretty crazy things, all along the different kind of like series. I think BBC did one that was kind of like a Planet Earth where where there was like an ant colony and there's a specific strain of fungus that basically penetrates their brain and kind of takes over, and they become like kind of a drone to this thing, which kind of begs the question of, is there any sort of sentience behind this thing that we may not give it credit for, if it has a mechanism that can basically make a zombie ant do its own bidding?
It's, I mean, the power of this stuff and the fact that it kind of replicates some of the patterns of the neural networks and, other things in nature that are super powerful. You're right. There's a lot more that's been exposed so far. I think, it's definitely worth researching.
Largest organism on the planet is actually a giant mass of mycelium in Oregon.
That it's an organ? I've heard that that's the case, but didn't know where it was.
In Oregon, I mean, it's the largest single organism on the planet. I'm not exactly sure the size, but pretty staggering.
If it's a big dick contest, I mean, that's the biggest, right? So you got to pay homage.
That's
well, good way to go, Oregon. Oregon is just chock full of progressiveness and the forefront of everything regarding psychedelics or questionable substances. If you want to do something that's not yet approved in your town, go to Oregon. They'll let you do it there, especially as of late.
Right.
But dude, so I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your thoughts. I appreciate your perspective. I've only really been delving into psychedelics myself since I had my ayahuasca trip. So it's probably been about 5 years that I've really been
interested in psychedelics in more than just like a hey, let's go to a concert and feel the music kind of capacity. You know, a therapeutic sense, a mental growth sense, just a kind of bettering myself. And so I know you've had kind of similar journeys, and so I respect you being here, and I do respect your your perspective on this stuff.
Of course,
Um,
man. Of course. I think it's I think it's a journey that I would love for everyone to have,
right.
but I also recognize that it's not quite for everyone. But I do like to squeegee my third eye every now and again, kind of recalibrate where we're going, where we're spending our time and energy.
Yeah, man. It's kind of stupid. It's naive not to these days. You know, it's the research. I think they're they're regaining traction in terms of research and experimentation and whatnot. But knowing that it's not fully formed and hasn't been given the consideration that it should have, I mean, that's got to pique everybody's interest. You know, there's so much more to be discovered there.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So I just have a little list here of things that I wanted to talk about. Um, My buddy Will, you haven't met Will. He's a musician friend of mine. He was on the podcast last week, and we had a good conversation regarding like music and its almost symbiotic nature or relationship with psychedelics. And you know, it's so amazing how when you introduce music to a psychedelic experience, it just takes that one audio sense and just amplifies it a million times. And just that relationship is super cool. And I know you as a musician, I know you do the drums and also the didgeridoo, and God only knows what else you've mastered. But as a musician, I was kind of curious about the way you feel about that relationship between those two things.
Yeah. There's an incredible synergy that can happen. But I also do have a friend who, once he hits his peak, he kind of falls apart and he has no idea what to do with his instrument.
Really?
Yeah, even though he's an incredible bassist. But for me, you can kind of like tap out whatever fidgety energy you've got and kind of go with it. So I mean, in terms of you know like a lot of improv, it's been pretty incredible. Like it definitely opens those proverbial doors to different like areas where you wouldn't have otherwise explored or even known that there was something to be explored.
Awesome.
And yeah, that's honestly, I think, my favorite pastime. My favorite thing to do of all is to have a good trip and just an off the cuff jam with some people who are on the same level and who can hang. And it's the experience of music itself, it becomes so much more rich when certain filters are disabled in your
No doubt.
sensory pathways. It's kind of tickles the brain in a different way.
Yeah. No, I love being able to just look at things with fresh perspective, man.
Yeah, yeah, it is pretty remarkable.
One thing that I found during my last experience, which was I've been trying to do one a week with the COVID, with the lockdown and stuff. I'm not seeing a whole lot of people, so the least I can do is give my brain a little bit of candy to play with. So, been trying to do one a week, and the wifey's been cool with that. So. It's been therapeutic, and I've learned a lot about myself. But one of the things that I found recently, I don't know if you have the same view of it, is meditation is such an awesome preparatory tool for the psychedelic experience, and just allowing you to negotiate thoughts and just kind of like that battle of just dealing with things that pop up in your head and acknowledging them and reconciling them. And for me, I found that that was a really cool correlation, and I've been better prepared for the experience because of all my meditation. And I know you have experimented in meditation. I was curious your thoughts on the same subject.
Yeah, I think I honestly credit some of my actual first psychedelic experience to my first spiritual experience.
What do you mean by that?
Um, the first time I took mushrooms was the most genuine spiritual experience I had had in my life up to that point.
Wow.
And to me, that has it's got a special place in my heart. and it's a place I can visit when I have the time to, to be able to tune out the world and look deep within.
And as a
And
new dad, that's been, I'm sure, tough lately.
yeah, so that's like, I think it's great that you're able to kind of, you know, enjoy it here and there. And I'd say get your fill because, once your baby's here, man, that's
Yeah,
going to be put on the shelf for a little while.
yeah, I can see you grinning there, as I talk about what I'm doing now, and knowing that you're the ghost of Christmas future for me.
Oh yeah, man. Hey, I'm a little envious. I'm like, oh, you've got some freedom. What I would do if I had just that little bit of extra time. But I mean,
I won't flaunt
it's
it, man.
been a rewarding journey, so far.
Cool.
It's a lot. I mean, really, life, it's just immense, and this is kind of another monumental chapter in it. So
Hell yeah.
onward.
Congrats and good for you, dude.
As Greg Berman would say, Kadima.
uh,
Onward, man. Yes.
Mazel tov, Greg.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of like my own experience with meditation, I'd say that I never really successfully meditated until my first dose of LSD. And
Okay.
it just kind of was one of those things where you had to submit to it, to the power of it. And, I just remember laying on the floor and just being fully present, and not having my mind drift into, thoughts of the past or things of ego, but just kind of being open and letting all the sensory information pour in, and just kind of feeling the present moment, and I look at, psychedelics like mushrooms and others, as basically like a wormhole to get to the other side of meditation. Like it's almost like entering a cheat code where, you go straight to the front of the line with less of the work.
That's a good way to put it.
There have also been experiences. It's probably a 50-50 kind of thing, in terms of sometimes, during your trip, you look within so much and you get kind of wrapped up in, things that had happened and overanalyzing what other people may have perceived and on and on. And it's
Sure. Feedback
kind of
loops.
that weird feeling of like being on stage and feeling like eyes are on you, when in all reality, people aren't really paying that kind of attention to you because they're kind of going through the same thing themselves.
Right. Like
more
when you're
self-conscious about themselves,
like when you're younger and you go out in public high, like it's the same kind of like, there's that angst.
They know.
They know, right.
They know.
It's funny that you say that you mentioned meditation that way and its relationship with psychedelics. For me, I haven't found that my meditation has got me to any similar places as what I've got with psychedelics. By when I say it prepares me for psychedelics, I more mean like with meditation every day. I have to battle those thoughts. They pop up constantly. I'm battling them, and my head is less cluttered once I'm done. And I can also learn to not freak out when those things enter and don't leave my head immediately. So for me, like meditation's been awesome just to kind of defrag in the mornings and get going. But I really haven't gotten to any like I don't know, super powerful experiences in meditation. It's been more of like a moderate benefit for me until I realized what it could do for me when I really go, under the hood with the psychedelic experience.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah. Once you've kind of combined the two,
Yeah.
it's a completely different experience. I
Right.
mean, in terms of like, you know, a lot of like the Buddhist kind of ideals of like non-attachment and just being present and so forth.
Sure.
They're really esoteric and really hard to attain, you know, in your normal waking life. But, having a practice such as yours, like a daily meditation thing, yeah you're probably getting some percentage of the way there, but once you've kind of combined the two, it's almost like everything aligns and you're 100%,
Yeah.
you can be, it's not always a guarantee. And that's kind of the one thing that I do respect about the substance, is that I still get nervous even after, I'd say I've had psychedelics for more than half of my life. I think my first experience was when I was 16.
Okay.
And even to this day, 20 years later, I'm still a bit nervous, when it's time, when you're waiting to see where it's going to take you. And I think a lot of it, honestly, is learning how to submit and let go of control and go with it. I
Sure.
feel like people who end up with a bad trip get a little freaked out and they try to fight it and wish themselves sober or wish themselves into a different place. And that
Yep.
starts its own whole host of, it's like a chain reaction of, you know, uh, fear and powerlessness. And I mean, those are honestly a lot of the kind of emotions that can plague people in normal life. But, you know, uh, we tend to tune them out, or we tend to distract ourselves. And sometimes when there are no distractions and you've got to face
Yep.
what it is that is really deep within, learning how to tame the mind is really powerful in terms of having more fruitful kind of experiences.
Right.
And I definitely would encourage, a meditative practice before going into it, or just at least having the right mindset, and maybe like a loose agenda, maybe some things that you could do if you find yourself in maybe like a negative loop of
Right.
thoughts, to be able to have some other outlet, or that distraction that takes you out of the rumination and kind of places you more into a present moment.
Yeah.
Which is, essentially what meditation is all about. I mean, I find myself in a deep meditation when I'm playing music, because, you can enter like a flow state
Right.
where, you're juggling the stuff without thinking about it, and you're just enjoying the juggling of it and whatever kind of different kind of variations that you can add to it.
And that's the dream. Like if you can get the flow state, I mean, everybody, that's when LeBron puts up 60, I mean, when he's in his flow state. So I totally
yeah,
agree,
I
man.
mean, and I definitely experienced that while sober playing drums, but I'll honestly, I may get a little bit more in my head in terms of thinking about, don't do this, don't screw up, or are you keeping up with this? And like, you get some sort of inner dialogues that you end up focusing on while you're kind of juggling. And
Yeah, and I talk
I
with
find
Will.
that most of that, all that inner dialogue and all that internal talk just kind of disappears if I'm playing while, on mushrooms, or, and
Yeah. Well, I think the setting. I mean, that's for me. It's like if I go in a public setting, like a bar, that's not the right setting for me to get therapy for mushrooms. Like that's
oh no.
I mean, I might have to interact kind of setting. Like to me, that if you get the right mindset in the right setting, which those two, um, they have to be given the same level of respect. But the right set and right setting, and the two rules that I always tell newcomers to psychedelics is nobody's ever died from this, and it's not going to last forever. Just remember those two. There's Mook, by the way. I don't know if you can hear. He's trying to make an appearance. That's
I
my
can
cat.
hear.
If you've never listened before, he appears to be nice. He's nice for approximately 93 seconds, and then he turns into to a mean little bastard. So even though he's my son, I can't speak highly of him
Sure,
beyond
par
that
for the course,
initial 93 seconds.
I think I think my father-in-law says it best to his own children. He says, "You're my children. I love you, but I don't have to like you."
You got to earn something. So that's
Yeah,
Mook. That's
I
Mook.
think
Hopefully, hopefully he doesn't enter the podcast too often.
right.
But yeah,
Yeah, and we're going through a similar thing with our cat right now, where it's Roxy's a family member, and although we kind of fantasize about, you know, letting her go to some adoptive family or letting her roam the outside world and enjoy that bit of freedom,
Right.
we recognize that she's still family.
Is
We
she
got to take
declawed?
care of her. No.
Okay. All right. So she could survive out there if
It's
she needed to.
it's less the clawing. Well, yeah, she could survive, but she's honestly a small cat, so
Okay.
there are bigger cats in the neighborhood that would definitely beat her up pretty badly.
All right.
But you know,
We don't wish them
yeah,
ill. We don't wish the cats ill. Sometimes it would be nicer if they could maybe do a little bit of psychedelic therapy themselves and tone it down. A lot of
the
feedback loops. What's that?
strange thing is, I feel like they are permanently on that wavelength.
So
You
sporadic
know,
and
and
spontaneous.
that could be part of the problem. You know, too much of a good thing.
That wouldn't that be amazing if they determined that that was really the root cause of cats being just all over the place, just constant psychedelic state.
Sounds like a good time to interrupt and provide you with a health segment from Wifey Jill. Here we go. Wifey Jill, thank you very much for joining us again on the podcast.
Yeah. Hi, everyone.
I'm sure they said hi back. This is not a duplex podcast, but yeah, thank you for being here. I love looking at you and being close to you. And our baby is
Thanks.
growing by the second.
Yeah, I hear these next few weeks he's gonna be doubling in size, and
Oof.
I'll be doubling in size with it.
What was that joke on Hall Pass where he's like, excuse me, are you from Ireland? Because when I see you, my penis be doubling.
My penis be. Oh my gosh.
And then he messed it up because he got too drunk. That's a tough one. You really have to nail that one, or else it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
That movie's so funny.
Great movie. Anyways, so yes, anything with Owen Wilson and Jason Sudeikis and J.B. Smoove. Dear God, great movie.
Oh yeah.
All right. So today's mushroom, we have a new one every segment, and I'm excited about this week. We learned exactly how it's supposed to be pronounced. Wifey Jill, what is this segment's mushroom?
Reishi.
Reishi. Not Rishi.
Not Reishi. Not Reishi. Reishi.
Reishi.
Reishi.
Reishi.
The reishi mushroom. So this is another one that I would consider a superfood, heavy-hitting mushroom that is, again, just nutrient dense and has a plethora of positive effects on one's health. And, a lot of the mushroom coffees, mushroom teas that are already powdered, ready for you to just add to your hot beverage, contain reishi. I keep wanting to say reishi, along with some other variants as well. But reishi is our topic today, so we'll highlight some of the benefits of that.
Fantastic.
So I can confirm that even though this is mostly consumed in a powder form, it can be consumed fresh.
Okay.
So reishi grows on trees, if I'm not mistaken, correct? It grows on bark.
Yep.
And then it looks like a turkey tail. It's kind of got this, it's almost like a step. It kind of grows out a step, and
Looks like a leathery, like a brown patent leather.
Yes, it looks very tough, which we have not really seen it in person, or even, in the wild. So I would be curious to touch it, feel it. Is it easily broken? Is it tough? I would be more interested in working with this mushroom.
Well, the guys at Fresh from the Farm Fungi over at the Cherry Creek Market, Gary, one of my favorite dudes, Myco freak like myself. They actually grow them out of the mushroom bag. So they had some reishi when we were there, and they weren't growing in like the turkey tail pattern. They were growing in like cylindrical almost, like stalagmites coming from the base of the bag. And it was really cool. They were like a combination of cream color and then that patent leather brown.
Yeah.
So I guess they can grow in more than just the traditional sense out of the tree, but I think he had to do some massaging to get them to grow out of the bag like that.
Yeah, I wonder if it was like sawdust particles from the tree.
Could be.
Or what the substrate was created from. But
good question.
But yeah, I would definitely imagine that the shape of whatever substrate you're working with, whether it be a tree or bag, that would definitely affect the shape.
And I think I watched some videos from Fresh Cap, another one of my favorite people. I forget the guy's name, but I think his name's Andy. But the Fresh Cap guy, the Canadian guy, he showed me his reishi farm at their mushroom farm, and the spores were just as important as the actual reishi bark. So
Oh.
I don't know the way that each of those two things is used, and if they're the same or different. But there's more than just the mushroom itself. The spores are actually useful in more than just propagating additional species.
Yeah, that actually brings up a good point with this is this isn't like a traditional mushroom where it has a cap and then it has the gills. At least not from the pictures that I've seen. It truly does look like a bark where maybe the spores are contained from within and broken apart that way.
Well, actually, we can pull up. Let me see if I can find that video. But yeah, it's just a different way of harvesting. And again, I don't know whether the spores offer different benefits than the mushroom itself. But if we look at Fresh Cap, love these guys.
Yeah, and while you do that, I'll highlight some of the benefits of it. So, immune system is one of the most important effects of reishi mushrooms that it can provide to you. So, there have been studies that found that the white blood cells, it does increase the activity of the white blood cells in your body to help fight any inflammation, any foreign substances. It has anti-cancer properties. In fact, one study of over 4,000 breast cancer survivors found that 59% of them consumed reishi mushrooms.
Wow.
We can move on to fighting fatigue and depression. So you don't necessarily, need to consume these if you have an existing illness or condition. This is a mushroom that can boost your mood, fight fatigue, give you some energy. And then additional benefits include, increasing the good cholesterol within your heart, so promoting a healthy heart, blood sugar control, and then again, antioxidant statuses.
Fantastic. It's amazing that there's so much of that packed into these little fungi.
Yeah, and it all overlaps, right? I mean, this isn't, some of these benefits are pretty much spread across all the mushrooms we've talked of. So, don't just think you have to find this one mushroom to get any sort of benefits. Just by adding any type of mushroom into your daily diet weekly with variety is really going to pack the punch.
Fantastic. That's great info. I found a video here. Let me see if they show so you can see what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Fresh Cap mushrooms. Love you. Tony is his name. Tony Shields. Health benefits. Yeah, you can see here, not you listening, but wifey Jill. See the spores are kind of on top.
The little the black specks.
Well, see how it looks like a sawdust, almost like a
Yeah.
dust. Well, so the spores are harvested differently with the reishi. So again, I'd have to watch that video and find it to really say specifically how that's done. But it's definitely different than your traditional harvesting of just a normal mushroom.
Yeah,
They
let's see.
they let the spores fall and then they harvest those differently.
So I'm also pulling up some pictures. The underside of a reishi mushroom is white.
Ah.
So, I mean, it's like pure white, maybe a few pores, but the top is interesting. So
Yeah.
yeah, again, Google that image and kind of see what these look like.
We'll do a follow up.
Yeah.
I'll follow up and add more info. But that's really cool. Yeah, so the spores they just get released differently, so it just changes the type of farm and the conditions that they have to get all the goodness out of each of those mushrooms.
Yeah.
Well, wifey Jill, as always, I love having you on here. It's always very informative, and hopefully the listeners feel the same way. And any parting words for the listening audience?
I'm going to go make myself a cup of mushroom coffee.
Boom. And on that note, we're out.
All right, bye.
Nobody's ever died from this. It doesn't last forever. And just to have those two things running as just a constant background theme, that's been helpful. But I mean, it's just reps too. It's like anything else. Like if you want to be able to dribble a basketball, you just need to dribble it, I mean,
Yeah.
you
Have you
can't-
gone the full heroic dose yourself?
5?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've done 5 now, 4 different times.
That it's humbling.
Woo.
It's very, very humbling, you know. Again, it's not for everyone.
No. Well, at 5, it wasn't the first dosage I've ever taken. So, you know, a couple of years ago, I had taken no more than like 1.5 grams. So, I've just kind of
Sure.
steadily worked my way up to a point where I felt like I was relaxed enough, and like accustomed to like what to expect enough to really, go in that space.
Sure. And I think it's a door worth peering through, you know, but my personal take is, you know, I've been there enough times and it's something that has resonated with me deeply. And I mean, I don't necessarily feel the need to go back there because it's an experience that I can still recall vividly.
That's
And
awesome. That's fantastic, man.
and you know, I mean, I think you take the lessons with you, and that's what's important is, you know, not necessarily doing it for the sense of partying, but you know, if you're doing it for your own kind of mental or emotional well-being,
Sure.
you know, sometimes you push the boundaries and literally like break that door down and you know, you go all the way in. But I feel like I've definitely gleaned a lot of the knowledge from it, from those, you know, heavy experiences
Oh
that
yeah.
have served me. And I don't, you know, I'm in no rush to go back, but I wouldn't, you know, I will be back.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, you're a new dad, so I mean, there's a lot going on in your life. You definitely don't want to venture into a psychedelic experience when there's like a lot of stuff and responsibilities, and you don't want that stuff floating in your head. You really can't really relax enough to let it do its due diligence.
Yeah. I mean, I'll find out. I got a friend, when we went, you know, I do my annual men's psychedelic retreat.
Yeah,
Um,
which I'd like to
and when
go on
we,
that if I can at some point. That sounds
and
amazing.
yeah, you know, once we're vaccinated,
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
you know, and we're all a bit more comfortable with some of those things. Yeah, definitely. But a friend of mine that I had brought on the trip, you know, we'd been friends for many years, and he's got two boys. They're about like 8 and 10 years old, and yeah, he would only take psychedelics when he's out camping, like where he can't, where you know the responsibility to his children doesn't exist. You
Right.
know, he says that when he's, you know, in town, you know, he can't fathom the idea of not being 100% cognitively there in the event that he gets a phone
Yep.
call that, you know, some shit has happened and he needs to handle it and deal with it, you
That's
know. So
smart, man. That's
he
set mindset.
yeah, you know, I mean, everything in moderation, and that's kind of where he's found it is, you know, he's content. He doesn't need to go there, but he's open to it though when the opportunity presents itself. But it's got to be the right set and setting for him as well.
Well, I respect anybody that's found that balance and what knows what works for them. And when you figure that out, then you can get in the right, set your intentions and get in the right mindset and have a good time.
Sure, yeah, I think it takes a bit of maturity and, you know, the experience to know when you've had your fill, and you know you can pass on different courses as they come along, and you know, and nibble at them whenever you want, you know.
Yeah. One thing, this is totally unrelated to anything on this podcast, of the mushroom variety or mycology. I watched. I don't know if my Cleveland Browns won this weekend, and I know you're not a big NFL guy, but my Cleveland Browns. This podcast is not dedicated to me and my love of Cleveland sports or anything like that. But you will.
They
I
sponsor it though.
They are definitely an informal, unofficial sponsor of this podcast. You will hear me from time to time talk about my love of the Cleveland Browns, and they've been playing really well. They have 10 wins, and our arch rival, the cross-state Pittsburgh Steelers, lost last night. And as I was watching the game, I was rooting so hard for the Steelers to lose because I hate them as an arch rival so much. I don't wish them ill in a physical, literal sense, but I do hate everything they stand for with a passion. So as I
Sure.
was hating and rooting against them, I was thinking to myself, like, this is kind of sadistic, and there is a word to describe the way I feel. And I'm not sure everybody knows and is familiar with the German word Schadenfreude.
Schadenfreude.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
yes.
so Schadenfreude, I first saw it on an episode of Boston Legal a while back. But that is exactly the way I feel. Do you ever experience Schadenfreude, and in what sense have you felt it?
100%. And I feel no shame about it. I mean,
But-
I feel like so many things are out of your control, and life is a tragedy or a comedy, depending on if you're a thinker or feeler. And,
Right.
hey, basking in a little Schadenfreude is,
Yeah, let's get
it's being able to laugh it off. It's being able to, I
the
guess you
actual
definitely are feeling something though at the same time. But
the actual definition of this German word is
harm joy.
the experience of pleasure, joy, or self-satisfaction that comes from learning of or witnessing the troubles, failures, or humiliation of another. I love that.
The words like the words that compose it are literally harm joy.
Right, right. It says that right here.
Which
That
is
is
fucking dark.
so dark. But I was dark.
I mean, judging things as dark or light or good or bad, it's really all relative and a matter of perspective,
Yeah.
I mean,
When it comes to football, man, it's all fair game. So
that's right.
I apologize if you are a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. Your team has been nosediving as of late, but just know that last night I wasn't shedding a tear. I was full blown Schadenfreude.
I'm happy for you.
Thank you, thank you. So the last thing I want to talk about before we bounce, I try to keep these like 30, 35 minutes if I can.
Sure.
I'm going to be building a laminar flow hood. I don't know if you've used a laminar flow hood. I know you're familiar with the concept.
Before you do,
Okay.
I've got a friend who built one.
Oh, beautiful.
He doesn't like it. He doesn't
What?
use it, and
What?
part of it has to deal with the environment in which it is set up. And he's struggled with contaminations despite having built one, spent the money on it,
Yeah.
built it out to spec. I looked at it, and it's not the same as like what you would see in a laboratory where they may have like a glass shield that comes down
Right.
to the bottom where you can only slip your hands through.
Right.
His is kind of open, and he has like a rack that elevates whatever his working surface is elevated off of like the tabletop surface. So it's
Gotcha.
like it's somewhat centered within the actual the opening of the air that's like coming out.
Okay.
But he has I think it's the room that he was in was too small. And
Is he trying to sell it? He's trying to get rid
there
of
was
it?
too much turbulence. Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna
Yes.
go in to buy one,
Yeah.
I can talk to him, and he'd probably let it go at a discount.
That
because
would
he
be
doesn't like it. He honestly prefers a still air box. He's
Wow.
had more success with that.
As long as it's got the right specs, the 0.3 micron, 99.9. Okay. Yeah, as
Spared
long
no expense. I mean, yeah, he spared no expense, and he's he's pretty well versed. I'll have to actually connect you to him. I think he'd be a pretty knowledgeable guest in terms of the kind of do it at home kind of cultivation in terms of his own trials and errors. He'll make his own substrate. He'll buy stuff in bulk. He's experimented with everything from like manure and straw to rye berries to different grains to, he probably started with the old school like PF Tech with like brown rice and vermiculite cakes and so forth.
Yeah, man. PF Tech.
He's done it all, and I've learned a lot from him.
Okay. You
You
did pass me.
I've learned some of the, honestly, what I've learned is keep it simple, stupid.
Well,
Kiss.
You did pass me his info, I think, if I'm not mistaken, because I did bounce some questions. You sent me a number, and I don't even know if I like jotted down what the name was. And I was communicating with this guy and asking questions. He was really helpful. It's probably the same guy.
Oh yeah, he's got a southern accent. We'll have to come up with a good pseudonym for him,
Yeah, well, I'd love to talk to him and meet him because yeah, it's just been a couple texts, me asking some basic newbie questions. Trying to go into agar and all these other different realms of cultivation. But I absolutely
he's done the agar. I think liquid cultures.
Yeah.
He's kind of explored a lot of the things. A lot of the different methods that you can in terms of like home mycology, and he's even done some just straight up like edible mushrooms that are just for the hobby of it, just to and yeah, what I learned from him is to keep it simple
Okay.
and start with the basics and follow the rules, follow the guidelines for sterile work
Right.
to the T, because a lot of people get a little taste of success and then they're like, oh, I got this, and then they start getting a little sloppy with their work, and then they start losing weeks and months worth of work to contamination
Right.
that occurs later on down the line. And you know yeah, it's probably best to just go back to square one and start with the basics and follow the structure.
Yeah.
But
No, that's always
yeah,
it.
I'll give him a shout and see if he can come on here. He's
Yeah.
definitely open to sharing knowledge and helping expand the common knowledge of it all, even
Yeah.
though he's derived a lot of his stuff from different message boards and different sites, like such as like the Shroomery and
Right.
other places online. But
Cool. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm definitely interested in that flow hood. So follow up with me on that. For people that are
100%.
listening
Yeah.
that don't know what the flow hood is, I have mentioned it in the past. Basically, that's like the coup de grace of ways to prevent contamination in your workspace. I, even though your buddy has had some issues with it, like that just seems to be the gold standard for labs and sterile settings where you really need to prevent all contamination particles from being present in the air. So you basically set up your workspace on like a steel table in front of a highly rated HEPA filter that has clear air coming through it, and you point your workspace at the airflow coming from the HEPA filter.
Right.
That's
So
where I want to be.
their calculations in terms of how many cubic feet per second or how many cubic feet per minute need to be flowing through it
From the blower.
in order for it to be a field of sterile air.
Gotcha.
And when you have that field of sterile air and you work within it, there should be, no possibility for, any sort of other spores to land in your workspace. As
Steal
long
your
as you're
spawn or
not,
whatever you're working on.
as long as you're still not bringing your hands above whatever it is that you're working on, right? Or any of your tools above it, like you're supposed to keep your hands off to the side, and never above. And so, I mean,
Right.
it's basically back to that step one sterile lab work. There are principles of, how to do it.
Yeah.
And as long as you follow the rules and don't get sloppy.
I love you, man, and it's good to see your face, and I'm glad that you're doing well with the family expansion. And yeah, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Dude, my pleasure. It's an honor to be here, man. And dude, the feeling is mutual, and I'm excited for you and Jill. It's
Thank you.
I'll also share with you some of the bits that I had found most useful in early parenthood and preparing for it and so forth.
And I have a book you
'cause-
gave me. I still have the book, so I'm working my way through that iteratively.
I'll recommend a number of things that I found particularly useful that, because there's a lot of information out there, but not all of it's great.
Okay.
And, every baby's different too. So what may have worked for me may not work for you, but, you throw everything at the wall and see what sticks.
Hell yeah, man. Well, on that note, thank you, Andy. Thank you, listening audience, and have a great day.
Walk with me, baby, come on and talk with me, come on and take me downtown. Well, walk with me, baby, come on and talk with me, come on and take me downtown. Well, walk with me, baby, talk with me, take me downtown. Well, walk with me.